Okay, are you guys ready?
Let's try that. So we thought we'd demonstrate some instruments. It's nice to watch the film, but one of the issues with filmmaking is that you only have a budget that's so big, and the most expensive thing in most films is clearing music. So you can't just have every song you want in the film. So what we'll do is I can play you a few pieces that might have been in the film had we had a. If Diana had millions more dollars, she would have certainly bought every song that you saw listed on there. This is the 1970s version of a Mellotron, the kind of smaller version that they made for touring, and it is a portableized, if you'd consider this small enough. It was for the time of Hammond organs and Fender Rhodes. This is a portableized version of the Mellotron, and has 3 sounds built in it on a tape. But in 1 minute, you can pop the lid off, open it up, pull the tapes out in a frame, and then put a new set of sounds in. So it's not that tricky to do that. But it made it a very viable thing for people touring around with the 3 sounds. And I'll show you the sounds that are built in this one. The first set is, which you'll recognize this copyrighted song. Classic song, and there are many things like Elton John even I'm trying to remember it now. On Daniel they had a flute solo which was done on the Mellotron, and on the record it just sounds like a flute player. It's a very simple part, but again, these are songs that cost money to put in the film, so they didn't do it. There's a string sound in here as well on the second track of the 3. Put some reverb on so you'll recognize the sound. The Moody Blues, of course, Nights in White Satin. And Mike Pinder, who was in the film, is really one of the first guys to say, that's not a home instrument for the Aunt Mabel. It's something we can use in our band, and actually take the big cumbersome thing out and risk taking it on tour, which is a lot of trouble. But he really did great work on that. If you've heard that record, you really don't realize it's not really an orchestra. The whole first part of it, until they start reading poetry, but all the music you hear, horns and things like that, is actually him in the studio with a Mellotron. So he does a great job of impersonating a real orchestra. It really is convincing, and it sounds good. The reverb, of course, helps out. Without it, it sounds a little strange. It's a little blocky and a little choppy, but not terrible. And if you've heard David Bowie, this is Major Tom to ground control. And again, if you can put some reverb on it, it sounds better. And again, it is a beautiful sound quality. This is definitely, I could sit here with a little Yamaha keyboard or a laptop, and I think that there's a sound quality difference of what you're hearing, even though I could play samples. This instrument has a nice kind of interesting tonality to it. Whereas that would not fool you into thinking there were string players up here at all, but it is a keyboard that's created its own sound, so we really enjoy it for what it is. And, as we say, children and people that don't know anything about music and technology walk up and say, I like that sound, I like the way it works, it sounds interesting to me. Whereas if they walk in a Guitar Center to play the new Korg, it doesn't really excite them so much, and we're not sure why that is. But one of the good theories is that the sounds are not perfect. If I play the sounds up the scale, they actually sound different from each other. They have a little bit different tonality. They're a little bit out of tune. So listen to the difference. This one's real bright and fizzy. The next one's kind of dark and dull. Which you would not find on a modern keyboard. They do piano samples and they do strings that are so perfect and even that it actually sounds more synthesizery. So when I'm playing notes from C to D major, it actually sounds very different. So it has a bit more of an effect of a real instrumental set. I'm actually kind of playing what a string section wouldn't do, which is block triads here. So that sounds a little strange, but if you play it articulated like a string section, maybe. And separate out the notes more the way a real scoring guy would do, a girl would put it together. It sounds a lot more realistic. I got to interview once John Paul Jones from Led Zeppelin because he used Mellotron on Kashmir, the very famous song that goes. And he's doing beautiful strings and horns on that one. It's a really interesting song that is enhanced by the Mellotron for Led Zeppelin. And he said that his idea for using it was, don't play it like a keyboard player, play it like individual string lines, play it like individual parts in a section, and then arrange those out. He would basically score it out like a string section and then figure out which fingers would play that. But instead of playing it like a piano player, it sounds terrible actually on the Mellotron. So people that are used to playing piano don't really like it as much. People that do orchestration might find a better time with it doing that. And there is a third sound in here which we like. There they are. Let's put some really long reverb on these ones. So again, a fascinating sound. I mean, it really is interesting to listen to. And it's not modern technology at all. The very first Chamberlain, I was watching the film tonight and I realized that it said 1951 was his first keyboard. And it sounded like this. It sounded like, you know, these strings and these flutes and things would be done by him back then. When he played a note, it would be basically the sound I'm giving you from the Mellotron. For example, these strings were recorded by him back in the 50s. By having 3 violin players come into his living room or whatever and play the notes together. They would all play E, and it went for 8 seconds, and then it stops. So he was doing that in the 1950s, and I was looking at the time frame. This is when Buddy Holly and Elvis were still in school. He could do these sounds at home, which is pretty amazing. So long before the Beatles exist, 10 years before the Beatles even came out, he was doing sounds like this, and it took forever to catch on, which is kind of interesting. So it's a fascinating instrument, even to this day. Hearing it is something interesting. Like a Hammond organ is not dated old music. A piano is hundreds of years old, and it's not dated and old to most people. So although we find technological instruments to be very dated to us, I think there's become a time when these will become classic and are classic, where they're not just old, they're kind of a valid instrument.